Speaking of the colored female, Professor Flowers. I didn't necessarily want to have to do this, but I know for a fact many people are going to ask. Okay, so who watched the debate between Professor Flowers and Vaush yesterday? Is our homework? Yeah, you were supposed, this was your homework for today's stream. Oh, he's playing Succo Nuts. Bro, I'm not gonna lie, Psychonauts, it's all right. It's kind of it kind of does worry me as a video game though. It's like stylistically ugly, but you know, it's cool. I've been enjoying watching it. Ugly? Yes, ugly. Have you looked at that? Have you looked at that character? Have you looked at the game? It's fucking hideous, man. It's like, it's ugly like a pug. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things where you're like, man, that is very ugly, but it's ugly in a good way. It's cool. It's not beautiful. Stop lying to yourself. The shit's ugly, but it looks cool. There's a cool ugly to it. It's stylized ugly. Anyways, Vaush decided to talk to a person named Professor Flowers. Now, I've known of Professor Flowers for a little while, but I've never like dived into their content or anything. I watched some of their videos. I didn't like them that much personally, but that doesn't mean too much. I'm just telling you why I've never like talked about her or subbed to her or anything. It's a great price. Great price, okay? Great price. And then she made this video like, you know, responding to Vaush's accusations on me.
As many of you know, I got a lot of pushback from new followers, subscribers, and others who insisted that I should like Vaush. So instead of tweeting and replying to comments and DMs, I made a video on it. If you haven't seen it, it's linked in the description below. And it will give this video a lot more context.
I want to see something.
So after I made this video, Vaush watched part of it on stream, then asked me to come onto his channel.
So if you want, you can come here and have a conversation with me. I won't like do debate bro shit. I know not everyone can keep up with my sick debate skills.
Even if I wouldn't be master debating with a master debater, this notion was still exhausting. And as I show in my video, your comparison of black separatism to white nationalism is still a misrepresentation. The context of colonized African countries, black separatism is a question of, do you want the people who have colonized you to leave or stay? To be clear, I am not a black separatist, but to bring justice to colonialism, colonized people must have the self-determination to decide if they want to live with those who have colonized them or not.
And that brings us to today. Where, well, today as in yesterday, but today, where she decided to go on to talk to Vaush for many hours. Very long discussion. How long was this? 3.5 hours long. So it's very hard to condense a 3.5 hour long debate into like, you skipped part of her video that makes you a colonizer. I just wanted you to hear that part of the video. If you want to see like the 5 hours of video that preludes this, and actually at this point it may be 10 hours of video. If you want to go ahead and watch the 10 hours of video that preludes this, go ahead, be my guest. But I'm not streaming for that long, okay? I'm not gonna walk you down like that. Once again, you're watching this from my interpretation and my views of this, not for the actual shit yourself. All right, we're not going through all the lore. All right, this is not one of those channels where we sit down and read every single book in Skyrim. I watched this entire thing last night. I watched the entire thing, and I have to say that my opinion on Professor Flowers has not gotten better. Actually, they've gotten worse. For me in particular. That being said, I do think she was honest, and that's going a lot for people, you know, these days. That's saying a lot for people these days. But I don't think that this is a good meme. Oh, okay. Here, let me give you a little bit of prelude. All right. So one of the big things that Vaush had a big problem with, all right, was apparently her take on things like genocide. This part of the debate that we're going to be watching here is Vaush, and to give you some context, this is Vaush testing the limits of her moral framework for what colonized people can and cannot be allowed to do in the pursuit of freeing themselves from colonization. All right. So we all believe things like, hey, bud, if you're like a colonized person and they're like enslaving people and doing crazy shit like Haiti, we have the right to fight back. You know, I think we all agree with this. All right. Vaush even stated himself he agrees with this. That being said, who those people you can fight, what that looks like and what you can do in response to being colonized, that's where the disagreement lies. Like, where do we draw the line for morally acceptable to morally reprehensible actions that colonized people and colonized countries can take in response to that colonization? Okay. And so earlier in this debate, she stated that like things like genocide are on the table for colonized people to use to stop themselves from being colonized. She was asked specifically if genocide was on the table for colonizers and they were like, we should genocide all the white people, is that a reasonable thing? Is that a reasonable step for colonized people to take to free themselves from colonization? Professor Flowers responded with yes. And then he said that this is like Nazi rhetoric. This is like fascist rhetoric. Every fascist Nazi country and peoples around the world use this exact same ideology. Basically, he was like the idea that if you can make a claim to your oppression and or colonization, you have the right to commit these sorts of acts and actions. It leads to a lot of bad things, right? And some people say, well, even if that's the case, because the Nazis did say we were oppressed, we are like being colonized, it's just by Jewish people. Now, did they make that claim? Yes. Did like Haiti also make that claim? Yes. And people point out one is true, one is false. Yes, but if we grant people the ability off of that claim to commit a genocide, then you get a lot of people being able to commit that genocide. Yes, the comparison that I would like to bring it to is like a castle law. Do you guys know what a castle law is? Let me explain it to you. For the people who already know, you can like chill out for a moment, okay? A castle law is basically a law that's put in place in a state, county, whatever country, that says if someone breaks onto your property, you have the ability, your house is a castle, you have the ability to gun them down. You can just shoot them, okay? And so are there people who actually have their houses broken into, who need to use deadly force to protect themselves, their property, or their family? Yes. All right. This would be like the colonized people, okay? Now, are there people who have people on their property and they just gun them down anyways and then use the excuse of the castle law? Yes, there are. But the thing is, one person has a valid claim to it and the other person does not. The thing is, castle laws generally do not lead to safer environments. They lead to everything getting worse. Gun violence getting worse. Like indiscriminate killings getting worse. People go to jail more when they use their guns. Typically when someone is, even when castle laws are still around, more likely than not, if you shoot someone in your home, you're not, the person who you shot is not only the perpetrator of a crime, they're also typically the victim of a crime. Because lots of people in the heat of the moment, they typically commit crimes when they got a gun pressed up against someone's chest, you know? There are problems here. So we shouldn't have castle laws, period, because they make life worse for everyone. They do not make places safer. There are not less robbings. Crime goes up, killing goes up, gun violence goes up. It makes society worse. The same, both people, both colonized and uncolonized people, will make the claim, or people who say that they're colonized will make the claim that they deserve to be able to commit a genocide. If we leave that on the table for anyone to take, people are going to misuse it. So this is why we shouldn't have it. And so that leads us into this exchange.
Because again, we're talking about various different countries.
So what
we're
if
not
it
just
turned
talking
out,
about like a monolith of people.
What if people thought within a country that the only way for them to escape colonialism, read racial diversity in their country, was through the whole...
Also, earlier in this debate, Vaush was also testing the limits of her moral framework, and she basically said colonizers equal white people, as in every white person who's in that country is a colonizer. So they also fall victim to the same like things that you can use, the same like tactics you can use for like those like colonizers, right? Just to give framework here, because a lot of people would be watching this and think that Vaush is putting a lot of words in her mouth. I don't think that I think Vaush put some words in her mouth in this specific exchange. I don't believe that he did. She already said everything there. She already said that. She believes that like the white people there, period, whatever you're doing, you are also like there, and you also can be, you can be rid of the country if the colonized people so choose. What about the Irish? Listen, don't ask questions.
Wholesale slaughter of the white people who lived there. Do you think that would be justified? Like, if they were like, this is how we're determining our decolonization, would you have a problem with that?
I think that would be pretty messed up, actually. Again, like, I'm not a separatist, but I think people should decide what they need to do. And I also think realistically that just would never happen because.
Okay, so I feel like a lot of people miss this part, and I don't know why. I don't know if their listening comprehension is just fucking broken, but if someone asks you, can you start like just killing or displacing all of these people? I don't think it will happen, and I think that they have the right to choose is not you saying no. Some people think that this is a no. This is not a no. This is her saying it's unlikely, and they have the option to choose what they want to do. It's like always using the word like self-determination, colonized people have the right to choose, but never saying just no. Like usually if someone comes up to me and they're like, should someone commit a genocide? The answer is always no. It's not even almost always. It's always no. Okay. Unless we're talking like freaking like sci-fi levels of every single one of this type of people are like, every single person of this race or ethnic group, all of them are this like, I don't know, like horde, or they're like orcs or something where they all just want to do violence and that's it. Then sure, I guess. But the world is a little bit more complicated than that. Oh, and just to be clear, like genocide is not killing military members. Okay, that's not what a genocide is. If there's actual military there, like cutting people up, shooting people, that's not a genocide. A military member is not an ethnic group. Okay, just so if it's a zombie apocalypse, sure, you can genocide the zombies. Okay. And congrats on 40K, I appreciate you.
It's just really impractical on multiple levels.
So
like
you think it's bad, but you think they have a right to do it?
I think that it depends what the situation is. Like,
okay, so once again, this is not a no. Her opinion on this, from what I gathered, okay, and someone can tell me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong in this, but her opinion on this, as far as I've gathered, is that she believes genocide in and of itself is abhorrent. That being said, if a colonized people decide we are going to commit genocide against white people, that is something that she believes they should be able to choose. Now, she thinks that it probably won't happen, and it seems really like unfeasible. But if it were, but like the Holocaust also seemed pretty unfeasible until it happened. Okay. So it can happen. It has happened before. That being said, she believes that they can choose that if they want. That's a weapon they can choose.
If that's the only way to get colonizers out, then okay. But again, when you look at people who've been colonized, that's just not what they do. They try to take the power. They try to take the power away by taking their businesses back, for example.
Okay, I know how it's normally done because I don't think most of them are as psychotic as the limits of your moral philosophy would allow. But you're saying essentially that you would be okay with them. Like, that's just an okay to you? Like, oh, we killed millions of people because of their race. And I don't necessarily like that, but I think they had a right to do that. Is that what we're going with? What else do you allow in the name of anti-colonialism? What about what Assad does in Syria?
I really wish, man, I really wish Vaush took a tactic of a little bit more grace. You know what I mean? Like, I know what he's trying to do here, but I really wanted to hear her answer just that question plainly. I really like the way that David Pakman debates, because he doesn't go on these like, what else would he doesn't expand on these sorts of stuff a lot of the times, which I think is great because it lets her talk herself into a corner, which I think she did, but you know what I mean? Grace is a good word. Yeah, like a little bit of grace, I think it could have been better here. I would have really liked to hear her answer that question. Is that okay? Because she didn't say no. She said,
Hey to you, like, oh, we killed how far do these limits go? What about the
okay, well, say then I don't think it's right to just slaughter a bunch of people. That does seem really fucked up, but I think
just like, what the fuck? I'm sorry, like when I was listening to this part of the debate, I was kind of like, what the fuck? And a lot of the rest of the debate was leading here. It was walking to this point. This is like the kind of climax of the debate. Basically, here. I hear praising good cross-exam. I do like it when I hear a debate that's more like a cross-examination. I do like that a lot.
I think that people should be able to figure out how to get rid of their colonizers. And there's been times where people, it's turned into a civil war.
What about?
Ooh, and one more thing I want to make sure. I'm not sure if I did this. I just want to make sure it's clear. In the beginning, Vaush said colonization and then read racial diversity. Okay? Because earlier in the debate, Professor Flowers said that, once again, all white people who would be in a colonized country are colonizers. So racial diversity, she agreed with this. Racial diversity is colonization in this context. Okay. Once again, I don't think it's all context in this specific context. All right. Of colonization, imperialism. All right. So that's why he said like, racial diversity, colonization. He linked those two together. She already did early in the debate. Lots of people didn't see that. I just want to make sure that's clear.
About getting rid of colonization, wouldn't it be better to talk about the idea rather than talking about first essentializing an entire racial group as agents of a sociological force and then treating them as the enemy that need to be excised? Wouldn't it be better to treat it like what it actually is, a political force?
I don't really understand the difference that you're making.
And this is honestly the scariest part of the debate for me. Okay? I think Professor Flowers pulled up some like really interesting points. I think she talked about some really interesting things. And I think we all were better after listening to that. That being said, this part of the debate is so incredibly telling and incredibly scary. It's scary on her part. Yes, it is scary. Her not being able to tell the difference between what a country and its military force does and your average person is horrifying, actually. That's what leads to genocides, actually. That's what led to the Holocaust. And lots of people were really upset when they make these sorts of comparisons, but when she's sitting there like, there's no difference between a sociological force that is like imperialism and colonization to a random white person that you can just club the head in of. Yeah, that's scary. That leads to terror attacks. That leads to genocide. That's what this does. That's what this is. That's what this ideology foments. That is worrying. And this is why I like, these more of like short questions, because it lets her actually expand and answer. But if she can't distinguish between a political force and an existential enemy who needs to be eliminated, it's a huge fascism. It is huge fascism energy. It is I can't tell the difference between like a random white, like if that's the case, then I mean like you can just shoot any. If that's the case, then you could just shoot any random American. Listen, she's a part of America. All right, we did some imperialism there. We just she could just get gatted and that would be okay. You don't want the bounds of this debate to be, we don't want the bounds of this debate, we don't want the bounds of like our moral philosophy to allow for things like that. But I don't know, maybe she doesn't care. Who knows?
I think that means you can
just we need
racially
to deal with.
Yeah, but you can deal with it without racially essentializing white people. It's okay to attack the structure, not races of people.
So I think for a lot of countries, attacking the structure of colonialism means dealing with the white people who have colonized it.
So, okay, the problem is,
here's my thing, and let me ask you guys this question. Let me like posit this question to you. If we're like, imagine Panama, okay? Imagine Panama. Imagine there were like an American suburban neighborhood. It's not specifically white, but it's American, okay? In this case. In Panama, there's a suburban American neighborhood, specifically American, okay? Like, this is the American neighborhood. The road is paved in an American flag. It's got the fucking stars and bars and everything, okay? And the Panama people, they don't want to be colonized anymore. Do you think it's morally acceptable for them to just start bombing those and let's say those people don't even engage with the like Panama Canal or anything. They don't do that. They literally are just living there, and they speak the language, they like work in the businesses, they just like have homes there, okay? Do you think that it's okay to just for them to just bomb them? Is that like an acceptable response? You can go with like the military, like you can go after like the military, the business leaders, the politicians. Those people are the ones that are the agents of colonialism. Everyone else is kind of like in for it, like in for the ride. I don't think that's like something that we should be doing, you know? I just don't. And the thing is, people keep comparing this to the Haitian Revolution. And so I made sure I finished up my reading on the Haitian Revolution. It's so much different. And they actually abide not by Professor Flowers' laws or like moral philosophy when it comes to there. Like, sorry. The Haitian revolutionaries, like, they killed a bunch of white people, okay? But those people were mostly combatants and like plantation owners. Like, those people were the people specifically like forming their oppression. Those are the people that they like killed or excised or pushed off the island. There were lots of white people who are still in Haiti and are still in Haiti today, at and after the revolution happened. They didn't just murder white people. They didn't commit a genocide. That's not what happened. So people saying that like we wouldn't, like people who agree with this wouldn't agree with like the Haitian Revolution or something, it's just fucking ridiculous. It's stupid. That's not true. They specifically, even the original Haitian constitution said that you have to be black to be a citizen, right? But how did they define black? It's everyone who said that like black people are equal to white people, and then their job as human beings isn't just to serve white people. And that made you black. Massive air quotes, black, okay? So there's still like ethnically white people who were living there, who they did not just murder, because they knew the difference between the people who were fomenting their oppression and people who were just happened to be there as well.
This is also what modern Nazis say about Jews in America. Did you know that a lot of our political structure
wait, hold on. Is that unfair to say?
Did you know
that unfair to say that the white people who have colonized those countries need to be decolonized?
Okay, hold on.
Is that so wild to say that I'm a white nationalist right now?
Okay, so this is the logic that every group of people I argue against uses. The Nazis will say, is it so ridiculous for me to point out disproportionate Jewish representation in media and politics? Which, by the way, is real. There are a lot of them there for complicated reasons, but you don't seem to care.
Why are they doing that, Vaush? They're doing that because they have an ignorant racism towards Jewish people. Why are colonized people trying to figure out how to decolonize themselves?
Okay, you need to, hold on.
Different contexts.
So while Jewish people in America are certainly an oppressed minority in many, many respects, there are elements of disproportionate control that they enjoy. So looking at that, Nazis will say, well, is it so wrong for us to want to free ourselves from the colonizing influence of this ethnic group with an oppressive and a colonial set of intentions for our people? This is the logic they all use, and it all stems, all of it, 100% from what you're doing and I don't. The essentialization of a racial group.
Because you're saying that, like, well, white people or white
I am not asking you to be anti. I am not asking you to be pro-colonization. I'm asking you to not essentialize racial groups.
White nationalists are saying that Jewish people are colonizing people because they own stuff. Is that what's going on?
I am telling you.
Well, I'm not sure if she was just mad here, but all right, economic imperialism is a real thing. And we do it. We did it a lot, and we still do it in places like Africa, like economic in like a lot of like third developing nations. Economic imperialism is real. Like owning all of the business, that's actually real. That is a real thing, and it can cause complete detrimental harm to China does a lot. China does do it a lot, and we did it to China. That's the whole reason why we send a lot of our industry there, to import our influence and to like exploit them for their cheap labor. And now like China's doing it to other countries, especially like Africa and places in the Middle East and Asia. Like this happens all the time. Like this economic colonialism and imperialism. In the States, we just call it like what is it called? It's called gentrification. In a lot of areas, it was done with a lot of like redlining. There's a reason why black business business ownership is so low. Like this happens. This is real. It is a real thing. So yes, you can. It is a form of colonialism. It is a form of imperialism. To use your economic power over a community to where they're all laborers and servers, and your people in your country owns all the business. Yeah, that's real.
Literally, people who are colonized African countries.
Your sociological analysis would be better if you stopped essentializing socioeconomic problems to racial groups, because that is the logic every group that we hate does.
It's just so for me personally, I think it was like unfortunate in this debate. She does, if I remember correctly, she does say genocide is bad and shouldn't happen. All right. She said genocide is bad first, but then said it can happen. But then finally, if I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody watched it, she said genocide is bad and also shouldn't happen, and it should be off the table. As far as I remember, there was no but she did say finally that it shouldn't happen. It took a really long time to get there though, which is really unfortunate. She made a lot of distinctions without real differences, where she was like, there is a difference between like the soldiers who go there to like capture a nation, and then the people who come there later once it's like a colony or something to like make a home for themselves and like till a field. There are differences between those two people. So she would like grant that, and then people took that as that being a difference, but then she said they can be treated all the same when it comes to like a genocide or something of like specifically white people. So she made a lot of distinctions. There weren't very many differences. And at the end of the day, it felt like really bad, and it made me really sad, because I thought that she was someone, at the very least, I thought that she was someone who wouldn't fall victim to this sort of like, oh yeah, like, oh man, like I'm not a black separatist, but black separatists can basically do everything that they want, like including like just committing genocide, whenever, wherever, basically, if they feel like they're colonized, right? And that's really unfortunate. I think it's really sad, and I think it's I don't know. I'm genuinely just like really disappointed. There are ways that Vaush could have handled this better, letting her speak more. Absolutely, I think we could have gotten more from her there. But it's just so disheartening to see a lot of these like big black figures. Well, she's not necessarily like big, but she's a very vocal black figure in this in the community in this way, say things like this, and I think it's just so. It's just really unfortunate. I just left the debate like kind of sad, honestly, and I'm still pretty sad about it. Still, that I was just watching it. I just kind of like, oh geez, this is my shoulder. I was watching it. I kind of just had, had a rain cloud over me the entire time. Oh yeah, and once again, this is not comparable to the like Haitian. I know people are now using like the Haiti and the Haitian Revolution as some sort of like club, to like club the shit out of like people who disagree with Professor Flowers here. Once again, it's not comparable. The people, the freedom fighters in Haiti, did not commit a genocide. We're not trying to commit a genocide. Actually worked with a lot of the white people who live there, and it actually specifically asked them to stay and not leave, and help them build the country, since they weren't like literally involved in like their enslavement and the destruction of their country. So yeah, like they weren't at all not at all like comparable to the situation that like Professor Flowers is laying out, that she would find like morally acceptable. She doesn't have to, she can find it like reprehensible, but like still be morally acceptable. And that's a lot of people's, ideas on like abortion, where they're like, I don't like abortion. Some women are like, I wouldn't get an abortion, but I think it should be legal for you to choose. It's basically her idea, but on like with genocide. Like you know, I wouldn't do a genocide. It'd be really weird. You know, it would be anti-pog. You know, it would be messy. It would be hard to do. I wouldn't do a genocide. But if like one of my black separatist friends in like a in a nation that wants to get away from colonizers, you know, it's on the table for them. Is what she said, which is unfortunate. That makes more sense. I was confused whether that was Professor Flower's original idea. I didn't think her actual idea was that natives need to kill every last colonizer to take back their land. No, she doesn't believe that that's what you need to do. She does believe that colonization still exists in let's say a black country if there are white people there. She does believe that. She did conflate colonization with racial diversity. She did say that. So with that being said, in a sense, sure, but she didn't say that means you should do genocide or anything. The benefiting off crime statistics is false. Sure, in a sense, there are black people who do make money from black crime. That does happen. There are especially in gangs and drug wars, that does happen. The whole reason they're doing it is to make money, right? Sure, yeah, but she was talking. If I don't remember the entire rundown of that part of the argument, but they were talking about how she said that the people benefiting from that colonization are the ones who are really at fault. And he was there are more than just white people benefiting from this. There are other groups of people. There are people there who were also, you know, it's not he was trying to wean her off the idea that white equals colonizer. And it's a more sociological problem than just white bad, basically, for that part of the argument. But she didn't really receive it that well. This is crime though? Yes, that's the point. That's the point that he was trying to make, that it is just crime, right? So it is, so other people benefit from it as well. So we can't just say it's just a race thing. He was trying to wean her off that idea that it's just crime, that it's just white people or just black people. It's not a race thing. It's a racism thing. All right. Is there anything else that we really need to go over in this? Are we vibing?
We're wiped out. Having conversations of hey, this was your land. We want to give it back to you. What does that look like? I don't think it's just something
and
where
why are we
snap
making
your
them all
fingers
one
and
block,
it's
right?
genocide.
There wasn't one indigenous people.
I'm talking about each. I literally said you would talk to the different groups of people who had land because.
Oh yeah, I forgot. She also said that you could that if we gave America back to Native Americans, whatever that would look like, then Native Americans can choose whether or not to send everybody back to Europe or Africa or something, which I think is also interesting.
This to me, the idea that land is forever yours.
How do we figure out how colonized people can have their lands back? I think that looks like a very different conversation for each group of people who's been colonized. And I think all of them will have very different answers. My point is that they need to be listened to.
Yeah, to be clear.
Does that make sense?
No, I think it's almost incoherent. So you would make the argument that
it's almost incoherent that I'm making the argument that colonized people should be able to.
This is a lot of grandstanding. I forgot. Yeah, this debate had a lot of grandstanding. Ugh, I hate grandstanding. Oh, I hate it so much. Ugh, why do people do it? Why? It sucks. It's so annoying. I heard you the first time. That's why I disagreed with you. It makes, I don't know, dude. Maybe I'm just racist, but dude, the grandstanding, it makes me so upset. You say something and I say, I disagree. And actually that's bad. And then you say the same exact thing that you said before, but you say it more flamboyantly. And this is supposed to make it more reasonable. One last thing that I want to leave this off on is centering colonized peoples. Okay. I think that a lot of people, I feel brought up the fact that Vaush's idea of this means that we need to decenter colonized people and indigenous people when we talk about these issues and center it on Europeans, white people, colonizers. That's not true. I don't believe that, and I don't think Vaush believes it either. That being said, I do think that those people should be centered in these conversations. Their like ideas and what they think should be put through should be respected and should be, even though they didn't get to make the decision on their own whether or not they will be colonized or have other people here, they're kind of here now. And you don't get like carte blanche ability to do whatever you want with human beings' lives, whether that be just murder them, send them to like a foreign country, or like whatever the shit. That doesn't happen though. They're like it or not, they're like other people here now. And, you know, even as, you know, fortunately or unfortunately that you think, there are other people here now, you know? It be that way. And since it be that way, I do believe that while centering them, that we need to be able to make good on their requests, like within reason, right? So obviously within reason, I think that's a reasonable thing, and deciding what is reasonable and what is not is another obstacle entirely. But I think that's the best course of action. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I didn't want to bring up ATLA, but yes, it did actually, with like the Fire Nation residents. You know, when like the Fire Nation was planning to literally raise the Earth Nation and the Water Nation to the ground, they were still dancing with the Fire Nation kids because they were just kids. Yeah, ATLA is theory. It's not even like approximating theory. It is theory. Once you've watched it, it's theory time.